What is going on with Matthew Stafford? Will Javonte Williams break out this year? And has Aaron Rodgers ever had this kind of praise for a rookie before? I'm Joe Dolan, and this is the Fantasy Points Daily Lineup for Friday, August 5th, 2022.
It's time for the FantasyPoints.com Daily Lineup. Staying on top of the latest news and updates around the NFL. Rise and shine, folks. We're taking the field. Here's your host, FantasyPoints.com's Joe Dolan.
Starting at quarterback today, and hopefully for the full season, is Rams quarterback Matthew Stafford. Now, we know Stafford had a pain-managing injection in his throwing elbow in May after he played through elbow discomfort en route to a Super Bowl championship. And we're sure that he wouldn't trade it for anything, but the Rams are limiting Stafford's reps in August, and it's getting very tricky to figure out what is accurate information or not. On Monday, NFL Network's Ian Rappaport reported that Stafford is dealing with elbow tendinitis. And while he, quote, did not get to a place he really needs to be after an offseason procedure, the Rams expect him to be fine for the upcoming season. So, our Dr. Edwin Porras, he and I have had kind of a back and forth about this, and he's been tweeting a lot about it. He would consider tendinitis relatively good news if it's true. Another possibility based on Stafford's symptoms could have been bone spurs in the elbow, for example, which eventually require surgery. Porras told us that tendinitis, quote, might hurt, but it's more manageable. And manageable certainly jives with an earlier report from the Athletic's Jordan Rodrigue, who suggested that the Rams might have to limit Stafford's reps for some time to keep him as fresh as possible. But here's the problem. Rodrigue later reported on Thursday that coach Sean McVay, quote, declined to call Stafford's elbow issue tendinitis and instead noted, quote, it's a tricky deal and, quote, abnormal for a quarterback. More so, quote, things that MLB pitchers deal with, and the team is learning more about it, quote, on the fly. Jeepers. Dr. Porras then said, quote, in terms of baseball injuries, there are a handful of options and none of them are encouraging. Now, McVay also said Stafford got limited reps on Thursday, and Rodrigue wrote that when Stafford has thrown, he's looked fine. According to Rodrigue, the Rams are trying to control everything they can while they can. In other words, before the season starts. All of this is to say we don't really know what's going on, but it certainly isn't great. If things linger, it's going to hurt this offense horrendously because backup quarterback John Wolford is not on Stafford's talent spectrum. For now, I don't expect this to touch the ADP of Cooper Kupp or Allen Robinson, but Stafford could well drop below the quarterback 12 ADP on underdog he has after safer options like Derek Carr or Aaron Rodgers. At Fantasy Points, our John Hansen has had Justin Jefferson as wide receiver 1 ahead of Cooper Kupp all offseason, and this is simply going to strengthen his resolve. All right, at our first running back spot is someone who his own team does not want to break out. They absolutely do not want this to happen. That is Javonte Williams of the Denver Broncos. Now, Cecil Lammey of 104.3 The Fan reported that Williams has taken the first snap in 6 of 7 practices and could get around 70% of the running back workload this year. But in a counter to this, Benjamin Albright of KOA Colorado suggested the split between Williams and Melvin Gordon at camp has been around 55-45. Now, Lammey then followed up his initial report by tweeting that, quote, I think it's unwise to say things will be evenly split just like last year, but I do think Gordon will get more of a workload than he first imagined entering camp a week ago, and that Williams is getting drafted at his ceiling. He could get there to be sure, but there is no value where he is going off the board. Now, Gordon is a consummate pro who just happens to be very annoying for fantasy. The Broncos' new staff loves him for his decisiveness, and our Adam Kaplan is told that that he is just somebody that the Broncos want to get on the field. Now, Adam also is told that he believes Javonte Williams is going to get a 2-to-1 split in his favor in this backfield. Now, I'm in the business of betting on talent, and we're in the business of betting on talent at Fantasy Points. And Javonte absolutely has that talent. But it is fair to suggest that there's not much value in picking him in the late second round. Remember, this is where Jonathan Taylor was being drafted last year after similar camp reports, and we know how that worked out. Now, Melvin Gordon is better than anyone the Colts had to compete with Taylor, but he's also 29 with 1,800 touches on his engine. Trust me, if you don't see it with Javonte, there are other options at his ADP, including Alvin Kamara, Leonard Fournette, and Nick Chubb, plus some appealing wide receivers if you want to go that route. But I would have severe FOMO on a potential massive breakout, so I have definitely been dabbling in Javonte's market at his price. Not every pick needs to be a value to be a good pick. Starting at our other running back spot, quite literally, is the Raiders' Josh Jacobs. Jacobs looked fantastic on Thursday night in the Hall of Fame. He looked explosive. He looked decisive, carrying the ball 5 times for 30 yards, including 2 receptions for 14 yards. That's great. Let's move him up. But it was in the Hall of Fame game. I literally cannot remember the last time a top 100 fantasy pick played in the Hall of Fame game. I honestly would love to know the last time that happened. The overwhelming majority of the Raiders starters, including Derek Carr, Devontae Adams, Hunter Renfrow, and Darren Waller, did not suit up, but Jacobs did. Now, all the Raiders running backs were active, and Coach Josh McDaniels said, per The Athletic's Vic Tafur, that, quote, "I always think it's good for backs to carry the ball in the preseason." Now, remember that the last image we have of Josh McDaniels as a head coach was drafting Tim Tebow, so he's not afraid to be unorthodox. But the dings keep adding up for Jacobs' value. Not only did the new regime in Vegas not pick up his 5th-year rookie option, but they also added Brandon Bolden and Amir Abdullah in free agency and drafted 2 running backs. The writing seems to be on the wall for Jacobs' future in Vegas. One of those backs they added, by the way, was 4th-round pick Zamir White of Georgia. He looked stellar on Thursday night with 11 carries for 52 yards and 3 catches for 23 yards. I'd much rather have Zamir White at his 17th round underdog ADP than Jacobs at his 6th. I think that's pretty self-evident. Now let's head to wide receiver. It's perhaps the single most hyped player of training camp so far, and that's Packers rookie Romeo Doubs. Now, thanks to Peter Bukowski of the Locked On Packers podcast, I can confirm that Dobbs' name is pronounced Dobbs, not Dubs. Apparently, Romeo did not feel like correcting reporters dating back to his time at Nevada, and also said it's fine if people say Dubs, but I do like to say a player's name correctly, especially if I'm going to be saying it a lot. And it looks like I will be saying it a lot. Dobbs has become the rare rookie to earn praise from Packers quarterback Aaron Rodgers, who said Thursday that the young wideout makes at least 1 wow play per practice. ESPN's Rob Demovsky reports, check out this quote from Rodgers via Demovsky. That's kind of rare for a young guy like that, Rodgers said. Now, we've had some guys over the years kind of do that, but they're all in the top 10, I think, in the Packers receiving history. So good start for him. Whoa, that sounds pretty impressive. The hype train has completely left the station on Dobbs, and it's justified at this point. Indeed, Rodgers has never supported a really fantasy-relevant rookie wide receiver. But the Packers have steadily churned through wide receiver 1 since Brett Favre was the quarterback. Sterling Sharp, Antonio Freeman, Bill Schrader, Javon Walker, Donald Driver, Greg Jennings, Jordy Nelson, Devontae Adams, okay? All these guys had at least 2 or more years of high-end fantasy production with Favre and or Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. And even guys like Robert Brooks, James Jones, and Randall Cobb had one particularly big year. The difference between all those guys and Dobbs, however, is they all got experience in the offense and with the established quarterback before blowing up. Dobbs has taken full advantage of fellow rookie Christian Watson being sidelined following offseason knee surgery, and he is earning all this praise. His current ADP on Underdog, frankly, isn't even worth discussing because it's going to explode. Next up, another rookie wide receiver is part of one of the best passing offenses in the NFL. We go back to Chiefs camp for a check-in on Skyy Moore. Now, according to Adam Teacher of ESPN, Marquez Valdez-Scantling dropped 2 balls in a 10-play offensive period. Drops have been a thing for him at camp even before Thursday. Meanwhile, Matt McMullen of the Chiefs' official website reported that Mecole Hardman had a big day on Thursday. Hardman caught everything thrown his way, including a deep TD to begin team workouts, according to McMullen. And to cap everything off, McMullen reported that rookie wide receiver Skyy Moore says he likes to sit behind Patrick Mahomes during meetings so he can tap his shoulder and ask questions if needed. He added that the offense is really starting to click for him. So we've got the whole buddy cop narrative going on there. Okay, so let's parse through this. Drops are indeed nothing new for Marquez Valdes-Scantling, as they plagued him with the Packers at times. Still, he never lost the trust of Aaron Rodgers, which says something to me about his work ethic and character, and I'm sure Patrick Mahomes will see the same thing. Everybody in fantasy is tired of Mecole Hardman, and I consider myself part of that crew, but it is worth noting that Hardman's best games have come when Tyreek Hill has been unavailable in the past. And certainly, Tyreek Hill's unavailable for the Chiefs this year because he's in Miami. And meanwhile, everybody in fantasy loves Skyy Moore, and I too consider myself part of that crew. The fact of the matter is that I'm buying on this passing game because it isn't going to stink all of a sudden. And there is a lot of buying opportunity here. I'm on the record as saying Juju Smith-Schuster at his 5th round underdog ADP is too expensive. And I'm willing to wear that if I'm wrong. But once I get to Moore and MVS in the 8th round, I'm buying. And while there's no way I'll be drafting Hardman in a weekly management redraft league at his 10th round ADP, there is some best ball appeal there. We're going to wrap up the daily lineup with our flex spot, and we have somebody blowing up 49ers camp. It's a wide receiver, but it might not be the guy you'd expect, meaning not the guy who just signed that big money contract. 3rd-year wide receiver Brandon NYUK is having a huge camp. Now, our guy Adam Kaplan has been out at 49ers camp and has been absolutely raving about NYUK. Now, Kaplan was out there 2 years ago for NYUK's rookie campaign when he had a great camp, but is adamant that he looks better this year. Kaplan said on SiriusXM Fantasy just a few minutes ago that Brandon NYUK has had one of the best practices he's seen in his 20 years of going to training camp, and that, quote, if Deion Sanders was out there, he could not have covered him. Also raving about NYUK is ESPN's Nick Wagner. On Twitter, Wagner wrote, it's a disservice to say today was the Brandon NYUK show, because you could say that about a lot of days so far. NYUK was again catching everything, including a pair of tough catches in the end zone during red zone work. NYUK started camp hot last year and tapered off, in part because of injury, which led to his sort of odd season. But this feels different, Wagner wrote. NYUK is more assertive and clearly comfortable being a top target. Defensive back Jimmy Ward said of NYUK, I'm just saying BA is taking his game to another level. Now, the big question for fantasy is if raw quarterback Trey Lance can support 2 big-time fantasy wide receivers and a top tight end. That is an extremely fair question, frankly. But I like to bet on talent, as I've already said with Javonte Williams. And based on camp reports, NYUK's wide receiver 42 ADP on Underdog is a screaming value. If you're drafting this weekend, load up on Brandon NYUK. I'm Joe Dolan, and I hope you all enjoyed the first week of the Fantasy Points Daily Lineup. And if you can't get enough, subscribe to fantasypoints.com because we're blowing out our fantasy draft content this month. We've had a massive week, including draft plans that are going to come out for both redraft and salary cap leagues, and I know you're going to get your money's worth at Fantasy Points. I hope everyone has a great weekend, and I'll see you next week, Tuesday through Friday, for the Daily Lineup.